that, I introduce to you Congressman Gohmert.
It's such a treat to be here with you in person, and the lights are on, because I was literally in the dark. I know CNN says I am all the time, but what do they know? No, it's my personal beliefs, and thank goodness we can all have those for a little while longer anyway. I think God has a way of preparing us for things that are coming before us, you know, that we don't even know are out there. Because you heard I was a state district judge, and then ended my time as a judge as Chief Justice of a Court of Appeals. But I could tell there was so much wrong-headed legislation. And, you know, I believed in holding people accountable for their own acts. But it also bothered me that the federal government was luring people away, paying them to avoid ever reaching their potential, and punishing people because they were reaching their potential. It just seemed like it was so backwards. I didn't believe in legislating from the bench, so I left the bench, ran for Congress, and here I am. But in Texas, we elect our judges, and the first thing I had to do, we had over 1,000 people who had been waiting trial, one guy for 20 years out on bond, and I promised when I ran I would move the backlog. We'd try these things. We'd get them tried. And so the first thing I had to do is set all these guys for trial. And so I had a big cattle call where literally, I would call the case, state versus so-and-so. He and the defendant would come up, or the lawyer and the defendant would come up, and I would say, are you so-and-so's? And I would take everything down. They would answer on the record that they did. I'd say your trial date is such and such date and time, right here in this courtroom. You got that? They'd have to say on the record, yes, they did. That way, if they didn't show up, I'd get their bond revoked, a warrant for their arrest. We'd get them. And when they're in jail, they're a lot more ready to go to trial than if they're on bond. So anyway, we were getting them moved, and I called one case. He and his lawyer came up, and I looked him in the face and I said, are you the defendant, so-and-so? And before he could answer, his lawyer jumped in and said, Judge, my client's deaf, and we're going to need an interpreter for the trial. I said, that's fine. For the trial, we'll have an interpreter. And in fact, for any other pretrial hearings, we'll have an interpreter. But today, all I got to do is make sure that he understands when his trial date and time is. So I looked him in the eye and I said, can you read my lips? And he looked me in the eye and went, I didn't know it then, but that was preparation for Washington. People will look you in the eye and lie to you. You know, but anyway, we were in a committee hearing having a big debate, and I commented that nobody was addressing the huge scandal of the day regarding Representative Weiner, and immediately the Democrats were ready to jump up, and I said, because he pushed so hard, he fought so hard to make everybody have Obamacare shoved down their throat, and the scandal is he tried to get a waiver for New York City. It's scandalous. Anyway, they were already moving to have my words taken down before they realized I was talking about health care instead of whatever else they were thinking about. Anyway, I just had this forwarded to me just a few minutes ago. It's an article from the AmericanThinker.com. By Eileen Toplansky. Far more disturbing than the salacious details of Weiner's dalliances is the fact that apparently his mother-in-law is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it goes on to talk about that. I mean, it's just been unbelievable. We had a hearing with the FBI director, Mueller. I mean, he kept being asked about, you know, he talked about problems that with Muslim terrorists, but he kept being asked, you know, isn't it true that Muslim communities, like every other community, And look, I know Muslims who are friends, I get it, I know, but there are Islamic jihadists who want to destroy our way of life. And it's just the way it is. And so anyway, and I also know of Muslims who are moderates, but they know that if the jihadists take over, they're dead. They're gone. But they're also concerned about speaking up against the radicals, because then they'll be targeted for just speaking up. And so it's a scary proposition, but I know of these situations. And so when Mueller kept saying the Muslim community is like every other community, and he kept reaffirming that, and so I said, Director Mueller, I've heard you say repeatedly the Muslim community is like every other community, and I see in this letter that you have, it says, quote, an extensive outreach program to the Muslim community. So my question to you is, since it's like every other community, how's the extensive outreach program going with the Baptists and the Catholics? And how about the extensive outreach program with the Jewish community and the Hindu community and all of those? We have a community outreach, to the whole community, and we cover it. So, okay, I get it. So you got the Muslim community here that you consider special. They get their own outreach program, and then the whole rest of the country is over in the general community. I get it. So y'all understand, if the FBI comes after me someday, I may need some help. Because this isn't the first time. When he testified before us before, I pointed out that you have a five-year up or out program, and y'all may not be aware, but it has devastated the experience in the FBI. It's Mueller's plan, and since he's been there, you can only be in a supervisory position in the country in an FBI office for 5 years, and then you got to either move to Washington or get out. We have lost thousands and thousands of years under his watch of experienced FBI officers. Now, I know some great FBI officers with 5 or 6 years experience, but I know in East Texas, we went from 26 years experience as the supervisor in charge to 6. Now, I have been a young, energetic prosecutor, and I knew the law, and I was a go-getter, and we need that. But you also need the experience that says, I've been there and I've thought the same thing, but let me tell you that's not a good idea, and I'll tell you why not. You eliminate 20 years of experience in offices over the country. Yes, you'll have people that jump up and say, Director, I'll do whatever you say, but you lose that experience when it says, Director, I'll do whatever you say, but let me tell you what the problem with this is. You lose it. And we've lost thousands of years of that. So I also brought up to Director Mueller the letter from his deputy that said in 2009, because of the evidence introduced at the Holy Land Foundation trial, we are suspending our close partnership, working relationship with CARE. Well, Director, the FBI has been gathering this evidence since 1993 at the Philadelphia meeting. You've gathered massive amounts of evidence, and I've got some of it right here about these groups. Why did it take till after you introduced the evidence was introduced at trial to suspend the relationship? And yeah, it's still work. And then, of course, with Attorney General Holder, to drop all of those prosecutions. Now, my dear friend Trent Franks was right before me and asking questions, And he brought up, you know, how it seemed inappropriate to have dropped all those cases against all the unindicted named co-conspirators. And he said, well, there wasn't sufficient evidence, and it was a non-political decision. I had nothing to do with that. That was a prosecutor out there. And in fact, there was a newspaper article that verifies that it was nothing political by the person that made the decision. I believe it was the Dallas News. I can get a copy of that for you if you would like. My turn. I've got a copy of the Dallas Morning News article where the U.S. attorney there, actually he's the acting U.S. attorney, because this president has not appointed a U.S. attorney for that district yet. And my experience is, from having known people that applied who had been acting U.S. they really hope to get named. And so I have the Dallas News article where he said there wasn't evidence, but I also have two pleadings that he filed, one in the district court, one in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, where he sets out a beautiful case to the trial judge and to the Fifth Circuit, explaining and setting forth the evidence in response to Isnag and a couple of unindicted co-conspirators who wanted their names stricken from all the pleadings. And based on the acting U.S. attorney's wonderful pleadings, because he did a very good job in response, the judge has an order, and I had a copy of his order in here too, that says basically there's a prima facie case that these named but unindicted co-conspirators did fund terrorists, the Hamas. So I am not striking their names from the pleading. And I said to Attorney General Holder, now I know, having been a judge, that if you lie to a judge in a pleading, there are penal consequences for that. If you lie to the Dallas Morning News, there are no criminal consequences of that. So I think about that in order to judge which version, which time he was telling the truth. So anyway, and then I also pointed out to him that I was quite concerned that Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, another named co-conspirator, still had special relationships all over the Hill. And that included, and you can go online to our White House's website. It's been 2 weeks since I checked, but it was still up. The transcript of the comments of Dennis McDonough, who is the Deputy National Security Advisor to the President, and this is a verbatim transcript. He says, "Thank you, Imam Majid, for your very kind introduction and welcome. I know that President Obama was very grateful that you led the prayer at last summer's iftar dinner at the White House, which, as the President noted, is a tradition stretching back more than 2 centuries to when Thomas Jefferson hosted the first iftar at the White House." Well, now, it's taking a little element of truth and expanding on it. But don't miss the bigger picture. The president of an unindicted co-conspirator is asked to lead the prayer in the White House. You can't miss that. And deeply troubling. And then the number 2 person in the National Security Administration is dear friends with the president of a named co-conspirator funding Hamas. This is a problem.
What an understatement.
So you understand, Thomas Jefferson hosted a Muslim leader back when he was president. He had wanted to host him sooner, but he was going through Ramadan, a time of fasting, and he couldn't come to a banquet at the White House while he was going through a time of fasting. So they waited till the end of Ramadan. And of course, you probably know, iftar is the celebration at the end of Ramadan where you begin eating. I think you start with the figs or something. But anyway, dates, I'm sorry. Well, you'll understand on Capitol Hill we try to avoid talking about dates. So, I try to avoid that word. And certainly not talk about it on Twitter, but anyway. But I digress. He had the man come after Ramadan. It wasn't an iftar celebration at the White House. It was when the man could come after Ramadan and enjoy a feast at the White House. That's what it was. So I tell you, it reminds me of when I was in the Army at Fort Benning, Georgia. Just south of there, they had a little community that was set up like an old ancient community. And one of the things in there was a blacksmith shop with a real blacksmith that, heat the metal and pound it into what he wanted. And I never forget the sign that was over his door at the blacksmith shop. It said, "All sorts of bending and twisting done here." I have thought many times how appropriate that would be to hang over at the White House. I love this country. We have been so richly blessed. I did not deserve to be born here. I mean, I was born, I'd done nothing. But I was born in the United States, and I believe the greatest nation in the history of the world. And it was not that I deserved it any more than any person born anywhere else in the world on the same day or the same time or today. But one of the hardest things for me to grapple with, but my faith in God is strong, is so strong. But it's troubling when you sentence people to prison and you know that their children will pay for the sins of their parents. They often suffer for the sins of their parents. I don't understand the great scheme of things. I've prayed for wisdom since I was 6 years old, and I have enough faith to believe someday I'm going to get some. But I know God's going to come through, but you got to understand, I believe, what we're told that to God one day is like 1,000 years, but I can tell you there are times that, look, I got it, it's like 1,000 years, I need help today. I mean, time's not a dimensional problem for you, it is for me. But anyway, I have been blessed because of the actions of people and generations that preceded me. It was not for what I deserved. And the reason I'm here, I ran for Congress, and despite what people think, it is a sacrifice. It is and my wife she'd be okay if I never ran again. But we have got to make sure that we give future generations the same chance we had by being diligent and doing as Jefferson said, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Future generations will look back and they'll either call us blessed or they'll curse our names because we let this greatest gift drop. I don't want to do that. I appreciate so much what you're doing. I'm honored to be here.